Welcome. You're listening to Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show where we unlock the church's ancient battle cry of divine filiation and embrace the gentle kingship of Christ through the riches of the Christian tradition. Happy Tuesday. Let's begin. Welcome back to Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show. Here as always with Pat and Lewis. We are continuing our discussion of verse 8. Give it to us, Pat.
Ask of me, and I will give you the Gentiles for your inheritance, and the utmost parts of the earth for your possession.
Nice. So today we just want to get into, what does it mean when we say receive the Gentiles as inheritance?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting, these two pairs here, that we have the Gentiles as the inheritance and the ends of the earth as our possession. And I'd like to read this and kind of say that those are picking out separate things. And so maybe the Gentiles as a possession or as our inheritance, the nations as our inheritance, that refers to how all peoples, all souls belong to Jesus. And then the utmost ends of the earth, maybe is picking out that every aspect of this world is something that belongs to God. And so maybe to start there, St. Josemaría talks about that this psalm means that we need to divinize all human activities. Right. He says in a letter, demand of me, ask me, and I will give you all the nations as an inheritance, and I will extend your dominion to the ends of the earth. Quoting that psalm, now he says, we have therefore the right and the duty to take the doctrine of Jesus Christ into all spheres of human life, bring the Spirit of the Lord everywhere, divinizing all the tasks of this world. We have the right and duty to bring everything created by God, the work of his creation, closer to God, without ever violating the demands of the natural order. For, says St. Paul, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas, or the world or life or death, or the present or the future, all are yours, and you are Christ's, and Christ is God's. And so I really like that interpretation that St. Josemaría gives to this psalm, that the ends of the earth are our possession, means that there's no activity that cannot be offered to Jesus, that does not belong to him, as long as it's a good human activity, right? So everything you do in your life is something that could be offered to him. The ends of the earth includes everything that you do, whether it's you washing the dishes or your drive to work or the moments as you're drifting off to sleep. All of those kinds of human activities, well, they all belong to Jesus, and you can bring Jesus into all of these activities. And so maybe that's one way of reading the utmost parts of the earth as our possession, is it's kind of all human activities belong to him. And then the nations, that refers to all peoples and are apostolate with all souls. So I think that that's how I like kind of reading these contracts, because why else would you include this kind of pairing? And that's kind of how I read it.
No, that's great. Yeah. So thinking about David as the psalmist, the Jews of that time, they considered themselves to be the people of God. They were the ones of the covenant. They were the ones who knew the true God, and everybody else did not yet know him, did not yet belong to him, did not yet kind of walk in his ways. And so that first part of it is really, asking that all of the people that do not know God, that do not as yet are able to love him without that knowledge, they're unable to walk in his ways because they do not know his ways. So it's a request that the people of God be extended to the rest of the nations. So I love that read for that first part, and then the second part makes sense. I never really understood, I guess why there are two ways of saying. It almost seems like it's the same, but it is distinct. And so I like that read, because we create these human realities, and how do we divinize them? How do we bring God into them? All these things of the earth that we touch, that we move, that we live with, that create our societies, that fill up our days. And so I love that explanation of the utmost end of the earth.
Yeah. I guess it offers another way to interpret it, which maybe is worth saying at this point, which is that it's repeated, the outermost parts of the earth is put for the nations, but more clearly that we might understand all the nations. And so it's kind of a way of saying, oh, the nations are given to you, and I mean all of them. And you can kind of hear how, and I mean all of them is you're repeating what you said before, but you're just emphasizing every single one, not just, your neighbors, but all peoples. So
Mm.
that's just another reading that's possible. And I think it could be true too.
And I think it's important too to tie this to kind of what we talked about last week. Really, this is a participation in the thing about that again, that John 17 high priestly prayer of Christ, that they may all be one in us. You know, that we're those folks who maybe not currently don't have that intimate relationship with Christ. We're called to kind of participate in Christ's sacred heart desire for them to be in union with him, in union with the Father. And almost too, like that, these activities that we're involved in, we're bringing that up to bring them also in union with the will of the Father. Kind of like in the praying that our Father, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Bringing these small activities, or these, maybe not even small, these big activities that we're involved in that may be just in the world, in our workplace, these difficult tasks, these challenging things, and bringing them in accordance with the will of the Father is a part of making even the utmost parts of the earth, pulling them back into God's possession, into that, even to that high priestly prayer of Christ. It's interesting too, because as I was just praying with this, I kind of thought about this, but in the book of Genesis, we're called to be co-creators with God, and kind of cooperate in his work through tilling the earth, taking care of this creation that he has kind of really brought into being, but we're kind of keeping it going. We're tilling the earth. And again, we're almost like co-creators in another way, kind of participants in his creative work of bringing this world back into its right place. And so I think that's a also powerful, rich way to kind of pray and meditate with this. Like we kind of have a renewed call to go out and bring things back to where they are. We're just as Christ came to kind of renew things, bring them back to their proper place. We're kind of going into this world and bringing people back into their right relationship, bringing activities back into the right relationship. And that's kind of a way to do it. And I think especially into those utmost parts of the earth, those difficult places, those hard tasks, and farthest ends, right, of the nations can even be those folks who may be very, very far away from God. Sometimes you have people in our workplace and we're like, okay, I can talk to the guy who is, I know he's, going to mass a little bit. I know he's like, kind of has a good head on his shoulders. But no, but this other guy, he's way too far gone. Like he probably wouldn't be open to this at all. He probably doesn't want to talk about the spiritual life, or wouldn't be open to this, maybe this discussion on this particular important topic in society that may be controversial. He wouldn't be open to that. Well, maybe God specifically bring our attention to that person in a unique way. Because just like on the cross, as we talked about last episode, he went to the existential margins, the peripheries. He went to those places where spiritually he in some way on the cross took upon himself all the sufferings and difficulties. Maybe he's calling us to do that in our friendships, in our workplaces, in the difficult tasks, or the farthest end of the difficulty. And it will push us, like it'll challenge us. It will push Christ in a sense, right? He was totally going towards it. He was oriented towards it. But even in the garden, his suffering on the cross, his suffering, his falling multiple times and getting back up again. We're called to participate in that, in the difficulty of these hard conversations, these hard tasks. And I think it's beautiful to say, like, this is a part of taking our inheritance. This is a part of participating in what Christ has already received.
Yeah, Benedict XVI in his meditation on the Psalm kind of takes it a similar direction, and kind of the courage that's a result of the promise of the Psalm, that to take on those difficult challenges. He says that the same Spirit who spoke through Psalm 2 in the prayer of the church bursts into the house and fills the hearts of all those who have invoked the Lord. This is the fruit of the unanimous prayer that the Christian community raises to God. The outpouring of the Spirit, a gift of the risen one that sustains and guides the free and courageous proclamation of God's word, which impels the disciples of the Lord to go out fearlessly to take the good news to the ends of the world. And that kind of speaks to this prayer. We can make it because we have the assurance that the Spirit's going to come and help us do it.
Mhm.
And it will impel the disciples, right? It coerces us. It drives us irresistibly. You mentioned the guy, oh, maybe there's this guy who you think you're worried. There's nothing I can do for him, but you keep noticing him.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you can't get him out of your head. You need help this guy, and that kind of, that's a kind of the Spirit impelling you to go fearlessly to the ends of the world.
I feel convicted right now.
Well, I did love the quote from St. John Chrysostom when it was part of his commentary on Matthew, but he kind of harkening back to some of the ideas from Psalm 2. And he says this, he says, no longer are we given promises of lands overflowing with milk and honey, long life, many children, wheat, wine, and herds. We are We are promised the very riches of heaven, divine filiation and brotherhood with the only begotten Son, a share in his inheritance, to reign and be glorified with him. And so we're kind of seeing that shift, right, to what you were talking about. If we're kind of put on the mind of Christ, this guy that I think is kind of lost, or just not really worth it. I am a brother with him. I'm a brother with him, with our eldest brother Christ, and I must care for this brother. And then we see sort of like the way that it ends kind of speaks to both sides of this, right? To reign and be glorified with him. And like we were talking about, what does it mean to reign? This kind of hearkening to the name of the podcast, right? Sons and Kings. The king rules by kind of ordering society, or ordering, by giving laws, creating policy that orients the society in the right direction, kind of pointing everything, we would say, to God. And we get to share in that reign, and we have an obligation to rule justly. We cannot neglect. We can't kind of abdicate the throne here. We have an obligation to carry out that rule. So it's kind of all captured to me in that quote from John Chrysostom there.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to just throw out there, and I think we have talked about this on other episodes. But the Second Vatican Council, this is a beautiful way of saying that in the incarnation, Christ has in some way united himself to all people. Like, even that person that we may think is distant, or in some way, Christ on the cross, as we talked about last episode, has united himself to the sufferings of that person, the difficulty that person is going through in their life. And really, we're just kind of, again, cooperating with the work he's already trying to do, and maybe already is doing. Actually, he already is doing in that person's life, in that person's soul. So we can't abdicate our responsibility, because God may be putting some stuff on us. Like, you're there for a reason. Like, you're part of this cooperation, this grace that I'm trying to put in this person's life. And it should be, in so many different things. I'm sure we have the same experience in our own life, people who were that for us. Right. So we have to be that for people.
Absolutely. Well, we'll continue this next week right here on Sons and Kings.
Why this tumult among nations, among peoples this useless murmuring? They arise, the kings of the earth. Princes plot against the Lord and his anointed. Come, let us break their fetters. Come, let us cast off their yoke. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord is laughing them to scorn. Then he will speak in his anger. His rage will strike them with terror. It is I who have set up my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will announce the decree of the Lord said to me, you are my son. It is I who have begotten you this day. Ask, and I shall bequeath to you the nations. Put the ends of the earth in your possession. With a rod of iron you will break them, shatter them like a potter's jar. Now, O kings, understand. Take warning, rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with awe and trembling. Pay him your homage, lest he be angry and you perish, for suddenly his anger will blaze. Blessed are they who put their trust in God.
Hey, this is Jake. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show. We're really glad that you joined us today. We hope you got something out of it. And if you did, I'd love to invite you to share with a friend, or even just like or subscribe to the platform. It really helps us to get the message out to more people, help more people with the show. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode.